Around 1445 BC, the Israelites stood on the edge of their dream, the promised land of Canaan. After escaping slavery in Egypt and witnessing miracles like the Red Sea parting, they sent 12 spies to scout the land God had sworn to give them. 10 spies returned terrified. They described the land as amazing, flowing with milk and honey, with great clusters so huge that 2 men had to carry one bunch on a pole. But then came the bad news. The people there are giants. The cities are fortified with massive walls, and we felt like grasshoppers next to them. These giants were descendants of the Anakim, tall, powerful warriors who struck fear into everyone. The report spread like wildfire. Panic gripped the camp. The people cried all night, complaining to Moses, "Why did God bring us here to die? Our children will be taken as slaves. Let's go back to Egypt." In their fear and unbelief, they even talk about stoning Joshua and Caleb, the only 2 spies who brought a different message. Joshua and Caleb tore their clothes in grief and pleaded, "The land is incredible. If God is with us, he will give it to us. Don't rebel against him. Don't be afraid of those people." But the crowd refused to listen. They picked up stones to kill the 2 faithful men. At that moment, God's glory appeared. He was furious at their lack of trust after all the miracles they had seen. He told Moses he would destroy the people and start over, but Moses interceded. Still, God declared a heavy judgment. That entire adult generation, everyone 20 and older, would wander the desert until they died. Only Joshua, Caleb, and the children would enter the promised land. For 40 long years, Israel circled the wilderness. 1 generation passed away because they let fear of giants overpower their faith in God's promise. It was a painful lesson. Unbelief has consequences, but God's plans never fail. They just sometimes take longer when we refuse to trust Him. Crossing the Jordan and meeting the real commander. After 40 years wandering the desert, the Israelites finally stood on the edge of their new beginning. Around 1400 BC, Joshua, now an old but strong leader, guided about 2 million people to the banks of the Jordan River. It was flood season. The river was wide, deep, and raging. No bridges, no boats, just an impossible barrier between them and the promised land full of giants and walled cities. But God had a plan. He told Joshua to have the priests carry the Ark of the Covenant, the golden box symbolizing God's presence, ahead of everyone. As soon as the priest's feet touched the water, a miracle happened. The river stopped flowing upstream, piling up in a heap miles away. The water downstream drained out, leaving dry ground. The whole nation crossed safely, just like their parents had crossed the Red Sea generations earlier. To remember this forever, God commanded 12 men, 1 from each tribe, to pick large stones from the riverbed and build a memorial on the other side. Once across, camped near Jericho, Joshua went out alone to scout the massive walls. Suddenly, a man appeared with a drawn sword. Joshua boldly asked, "Are you for us or against us?" The reply was shocking. "Neither. I am the commander of the Lord's army." Joshua fell on his face in worship. The commander told him to remove his sandals. The ground was holy, just like when God appeared to Moses at the burning bush. This wasn't just an angel. Many believe it was God himself or a pre-incarnate Jesus, showing up in warrior form, ready to fight for his people. The message was clear. The battle wasn't Joshua's. It was God's. Joshua wasn't in charge. He had to follow the real commander. This moment changed everything. It reminded Joshua and us that true victory comes from trusting and obeying God, not our own strength. The same commander is still with us today in life's battles. The fall of Jericho and the rule of Cherem. The biblical story of Jericho's fall in Joshua 6 is one of the most dramatic accounts in the Old Testament. After 40 years in the wilderness, Joshua led the Israelites across the Jordan River into the Promised Land. Their first target was Jericho, a heavily fortified Canaanite city with massive walls, so thick that houses were built into them. God gave Joshua an unusual battle plan. For 6 days, the army marched silently around the city once each day, with priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant and blowing ram's horns. On the seventh day, they circled 7 times, then shouted loudly. Miraculously, the walls collapsed outward, creating ramps of fallen bricks that allowed the Israelites to charge straight in. But victory came with a strict command. The entire city was placed under cherem or herem, a Hebrew term meaning devoted to destruction. Everything, people, animals, and goods, had to be completely destroyed as an offering to God. Only precious metals went to the Lord's treasury, and Rahab, who hid the Israelite spies, and her family were spared, marked by a scarlet cord in her window. Cherem was like spiritual warfare. It prevented contamination from Canaanite idolatry and ensured total dependence on God. Touching anything devoted meant severe judgment. Archaeology at Tel Esultan, ancient Jericho, reveals evidence of a violent destruction by fire, with thick ash layers and collapsed mud brick walls falling outward, matching the biblical timeline for some scholars, around 1400 BC. Jars full of grain were left unplundered, unusual for conquerors but fitting cherem rules. This event marked the start of the conquest, showing God's power over impossible obstacles. Today, Jericho's ruins remind us of faith, obedience, and divine judgment. The sin of Achan and the lesson of Ai. After the miraculous fall of Jericho, the Israelites were riding high on victory. God had commanded that everything in the city be devoted to destruction, cherem. All gold, silver, and valuables went to God's treasury, and nothing could be taken personally. But one man, Achan from the tribe of Judah, couldn't resist. He saw a beautiful Babylonian robe, 200 silver coins, and a gold bar weighing about a pound. He coveted them, stole them, and buried them under his tent. Joshua 7 verses 20 to 21. This hidden greed brought disaster. When Joshua sent a small force to attack the nearby town of Ai, thinking it would be an easy win, the Israelites were routed. 36 men died, and the army fled in panic. Joshua fell on his face before God, confused and heartbroken. Why have you brought us here just to be defeated? God's answer is clear. Israel has sinned. They have taken devoted things. One man's secret sin had infected the whole nation, blocking God's blessing and protection. Sin isn't private. It affects everyone around us. Through a divine process of elimination, tribe by tribe and family by family, Achan was exposed. He confessed, but it was too late. He, his family, and all his possessions were taken to the valley of Acre, stoned, and burned, a severe judgment that showed how seriously God views disobedience. Once the sin was removed, Israel attacked Ai again. This time, with a clever ambush strategy from God, they destroyed the city completely. Archaeology at sites like Khirbet el-Makatir, a proposed location for biblical Ai, shows evidence of a burned fortress from around the conquest era, supporting the Bible's timeline. The lesson? Hidden sin blocks God's power in our lives and communities. Greed and disobedience may seem small, but they lead to defeat. Confession, repentance, and removal of sin bring restoration and victory. Today, we're reminded, be quick to deal with sin. God sees everything, and obedience opens the door to his blessings. The long day, sun and moon stand still. In the Bible's book of Joshua, chapter 10, one of the most amazing miracles happens during a big battle. Joshua and the Israelites are fighting 5 kings in the south who teamed up against them to help the Gibeonites, who had a treaty with Israel. Joshua marches his army all night and surprises the enemies at dawn. God helps by sending huge hailstones that kill more enemies than the swords do. But as the day goes on, the sun starts to set, and some enemies are escaping. Joshua prays boldly, "Sun, stand still over Gibeon. Moon, stay over the valley of Ajalon." Amazingly, the sun stops in the sky, and the moon freezes too. The day lasts extra long, about a full day more, giving Israel time to win completely. The Bible says there was never a day like it before or after when God listened to a man's voice like that. This long day has sparked lots of debate. Some see it as a real miracle where God paused Earth's rotation or bent light. Others think it might describe a solar eclipse, making the sun stop shining for a bit. Ancient legend from places like Mexico, China, and Egypt talk about unusual long days or nights around that time, though experts argue if they're connected. Archaeology shows big destructions in Canaan cities like Hazor around Joshua's era, matching the conquest story. Whether literal or poetic, this event shows God's power helping his people. It reminds believers today that the same God can stop the sun in impossible situations, be strong and courageous. Who were these giants really? The Nephilim story. The Bible's mention of giants has fascinated readers for centuries, especially in Genesis 6 verse 4. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to daughters of humans and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown. Who were these Nephilim? The word Nephilim likely means fallen ones in Hebrew. One popular ancient interpretation, expanded in the non-canonical Book of Enoch, says they were offspring of sons of God, seen as fallen angels or watchers, who mated with human women. These hybrids were giant, powerful beings, part angel, part human, who brought violence and corruption to the world. God sent the flood partly to wipe them out, as their existence defied natural order. After the flood, the Bible mentions giants again in Canaan, like the Anakim, Rephaim, and Emim, Numbers 13:33. Deuteronomy 2, verses 10 to 11. Israelite spies describe them as so tall that we seemed like grasshoppers. Famous examples include Goliath, over 9 feet tall, and King Ugabation, whose bed was about 13 feet long. Scholars debate the origins. Some see the sons of God as godly men from Seth's line marrying ungodly women from Cain's, producing mighty but human warriors. Others link giant tales to ancient impressions of massive Canaanite walls and structures, exaggerating normal tall people into legends. Archaeology offers no confirmed giant skeletons. Claims of huge bones are often debunked or exaggerated. Real finds show some ancient people were taller than average, but not supernatural hybrids. Canaan had fortified cities with thick walls, possibly inspiring giant stories. In the end, whether literal giants or symbolic tyrants, the Nephilim represent chaos and evil opposing God. Their defeat by Joshua and David shows faith triumphs over any giant obstacle. The conquest ends, but the job isn't finished. After decades of wandering and years of fierce battles, Joshua finally brought the conquest of Canaan close to completion. At 85, the old warrior led Israel against a massive northern coalition, an army as countless as sand on the seashore, filled with towering giants and gleaming chariots. God's promise rang clear. Do not be afraid. Tomorrow they will all be dead. In a single day, the northern forces crumbled. Hazor, the giant stronghold and capital of the region, burned so fiercely that its flames could be seen from miles away. Joshua destroyed hundreds of chariots and wiped out the last major kings of the Anakim, the full-blooded descendants of the Nephilim. The land was divided among the tribes. Caleb, also 85 and still full of fire, demanded his promised mountain. Hebron, once ruled by the fearsome giant brothers Ahiman, Sheshai, and Talmai, with sword in hand, he drove them out and claimed the city where Abraham himself was buried. Most of the giant clans were gone, erased from the mountains and valleys. Yet pockets remained. In the coastal cities of Gaza, Gath, and Ashdod, Philistine strongholds, the last Anakim survivors hid and rebuilt their strength. The job wasn't fully finished. Israel's incomplete obedience left dangerous seeds behind. Generations later, those seeds grew into Goliath, the 9-foot champion who terrified armies until a young shepherd named David ended the bloodline with a single stone. On his final night, Joshua gathered the people at Shechem. His voice cracked with age and urgency. Choose today whom you will serve. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. The nations shouted their commitment, but history shows they soon drifted. The conquest was 90% done, but that last 10% cost Israel centuries of pain, oppression, and spiritual struggle. The physical giants were mostly gone, but their dark influence lingered in greed, idolatry, and pride. Today, the real war continues, not against flesh and blood, but against the same ancient spirits. Joshua's God still calls us to finish the job. Be strong, courageous, and fully obedient.